So the Giants have the day off today before the dog days of training camp officially kick in. We're talking 6 practices in the books, 2 of them with pads on, of course. So we got a mini Blue Rush episode for you guys, training camp edition, and we're going to pull up in the double box because I'm not all by myself. He's the plug for all things Giants related. He's the post-Giants beat writer, Paul Schwartz. Paul, it's easier to talk Giants football when we're in the comforts of the air conditioner and not out there in that heat. How you feeling, my man?
I'm feeling cool. Not from a persona point of view, from a temperature point of view. It was a little steamy out there Tuesday, looking at the temperatures, another heat wave coming. I mean, it's not even the dog days of summer yet. I mean, we're just barely getting into August here, right?
Yep.
But HHH, right? Hazy, hot, and humid. That's training camp. That's what the NFL's about this time of year. And I always say, you know, when you get a little cloud cover, you got to feel blessed, right? As long as it's not that sun beating down on it.
And it's the worst thing for the players because what are we, a little over a week before the first before the first preseason game, and it's like now you're starting to get tired of going up against the same dudes over and over again. And we kind of saw that yesterday. I guess you could say the offense was a little stagnant. I guess we'll kick this thing off, talk about Daniel Jones in the passing game because there's all types of narratives out there on Twitter and X. So from your professional perspective, you've been at every practice, you've watched. Where is Daniel Jones in this Giants passing game 6 practices in to training camp?
You know, if we had a 10-second podcast and he only gave me one word, I would say rusty.
Okay.
He just looks rusty. I mean, he's looked rusty from the start of camp, really. And now, why would he be rusty? Oh, maybe because he hasn't played in 8 months. Is that about right? 8 or 9 months, right? He went down in early November with a torn right ACL. And, you know, I don't think he's getting enough credit for how hard he worked. I mean, 8 months is just right, Brandon, just right on the cusp of when you should be returning. Right now, I understand he's not a cornerback, he's not a running back, he's a quarterback. So those violent cuts that you have to make, you know, he doesn't have to make them as a quarterback. But you know, I've seen him running on the side, I've seen him running in practice. He plants his right foot and makes a move. He doesn't look hesitant. So physically good, really good, impressive. You know, a tribute to his hard work. You know, he's in there every day. He was determined to be back for the start of camp. I'm actually a little bit surprised that he's taking every rep with the first team. You know, does he have to take every rep? Clearly, he's not, you know, reporting at the end of the day to the trainers or to the coaches that, you know, I'm sore, I'm a little stiff. So, you know, and if he is, I hope he's not pushing through it because he needs to take a little break. You know, it's not always a linear ascension, you know, with these kind of injuries. But I think he looks rusty. You know, I think the passing attack looks okay at times. You know, we'll talk about the receivers. They have looked really good at times. I think the offensive line, unfortunately, has been in flux with guys coming in, guys coming out. But I think, you know, they're starting to stabilize with a bunch of veterans in there now. And but you know, he just looks, I don't know what you think. I think he looks like he hasn't played in a while, hasn't felt the rush, hasn't felt, you know, number 97, Dexter Lawrence kind of breathing down his back. Look, he's wearing a red jersey. You can't hit him. You can't touch him. That doesn't mean he can't be made uncomfortable in the pocket. They want him to be made uncomfortable in the pocket. And that's what he looks. He looks uncomfortable and rusty. And, you know, I'm not saying it's time to pick it up, but you'd like to see incremental improvements that things are getting better.
Yeah, I think this next week is going to be big for him. And when we say rusty, I think the knee looks great. Remember that time we were sitting there on the sideline and you pointed it out to me? He turned up the field on Bobby Okereke and kind of got past him and would have had a big gain off of that. Like you said, planted that right foot in the ground and got north-south, got vertical. So I think the knee is there. I think the mental is there as well. But I want to see some of these deep shots be a little bit easier for some of these receivers. Now, you see him making plays with Neighbors, some deep throws to Neighbors. He and Jalen Hyatt have kind of gotten that deep ball down, which is going to be great because, I mean, that explosive play has to be in this Giants offense this year. But there are times where you see him overthrow guys. There are times where you see him drastically underthrow Neighbors, and he has to come back and try and make some great play on the ball. Now, I know he's got Odell-like catch radius, but that's hard for any receiver when you've got 3-4 steps on the guy. And that turns a potential touchdown into just a big gain if he does make that catch. And this is that Giants offense that where you have to see the touchdowns this year. So I think when you say, like, he has to kind of pick it up, I think this is a big week for him. I don't know how much the starters are going to play in that first game. I think he needs at least a quarter, maybe a half, because it's like, do you risk putting him out there? Drew Lock hasn't done enough, I believe, at this point to show that he is an upgrade yet from Tyrod Taylor being the QB2 from last year to this year. But I think Daniel Jones and these receivers, especially on these big plays, throwing the ball down the field, which you're seeing Kafka and Daboll call these deep shots, taking these shots. I think that needs to come because it's going to just open up everything else within this offense. And you mentioned the offensive line. You know, Coach Daboll has kind of come out and, I don't know, he's kind of speaking out of two sides of his mouth, per se, because he'll say, like, oh, it's great that they're kind of having to go through these combinations right now early because that's what they had to do last year. But then he'll also say, well, I want some sort of continuity. I want that 5, who's going to be that 5 to kind of start getting reps together and getting some sort of continuity so they can play together, communicate together, and kind of build that chemistry. And like you said, you watch the offensive line more than I do, Paul. You don't think they're there just yet?
Well, no, they're clearly not there just yet. Look, Brandon, this year is about immediacy. You know, you noticed in the spring, right? There was no 7-on-7. It was 11-on-11 team stuff. Yeah. Now, Daniel Jones didn't participate in that, but clearly they remember they got ambushed 40-0 in the first game last year, right? And you know, were they ready to play? Were they not ready to play? So clearly this is a emphasis of Brian Daboll. We have to get moving faster. Last year it was mixing and matching. You play left guard, you play left tackle, you go in, you go. Now they want to set it. Now they haven't been able to, but here's what I will tell you about the offensive line. It's going to be a lot more experienced, and that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll right now are not sitting on these draft picks and saying, well, there are guys, there are draft picks. We're going to have to give them the benefit of the doubt. You know, Evan Neal is hurt, right? And when you're hurt, you are not, you know, it's you know, gone, goodbye, you know, gone and not forgotten, but gone. But Evan Neal has not come back yet from off-season ankle surgery. And, you know, I spoke to someone with the Giants. I said, you expect him to be your starting right tackle on opening day? And they said, no, he hasn't gotten on the field, and he has to beat out Jermaine Illuminor. They have options this year. Illuminor started all 17 games at right tackle for the Raiders last year. He might just be better than Evan Neal. So they haven't cast Evan Neal aside, but they have said, look, we've recruited over you, and if you have to come back and show you're healthy and then show you're better than this guy. Now, just the other day, we saw number 74, Greg Van Roten in uniform, right? He was not practicing. He was just signed. He's 34 years old. He started every game last year for the Raiders at right guard, okay? Every game. So you have Illuminor and Van Roten, who started every game last year on the right side for the Raiders. They very much could be the starting right side to the Giants' offensive line this year. Now, what happened to Josh Azudu? What happened to Marcus McKeithen? What happened to Evan Neal? These are all draft picks of Joe Schoen. Well, they haven't got it done for one reason or another, injury, performance. And so they're saying, we're not giving up on you, but we're not saying you're our draft picks, we're sticking with you. So, you know, John Runyon could be moved to left guard, and you have Andrew Thomas. So you have 4 established veteran guys, and then you have John Michael Schmitz in year number 2, who's got a shoulder issue, same shoulder that cost him 3 games last year, but not the same injury, according to Brian Daboll. So he's been out for a while, but they're not screwing around here. You know, they're like, we got to get our 5 best guys. If they're veterans, fine. And we got to get from square one, from day one of the season. We can't be like mixing and matching. We got to be ready to go.
Yeah, I'm glad they're doing that, Paul, because it's like we're always talking about the offensive lines. The offensive line going to get better. What moves they're going to make. And I'm glad they brought in veteran guys. And you talk about that right side, 2 guys that have already played with each other, know the chemistry as well. He put everybody on notice if you're a receiver, if you're a running back, if you're within that offense, you're seeing it now like, okay, they're really trying to address this offensive line. If I'm Malik Neighbors, if I'm Jalen Hyatt, I'm looking at it like I'm going to have time. I feel as though if these guys get it together, I'm going to be able to get down the field this year. We're going to be able to push the ball down the field because we're talking about an offense that only had, 44 pass plays over 20 yards. They only had 7 over 40 last year. And you can't get that. You can't get that done. You can't get it done in the NFL if you can't push the ball down the field. But you got to have time to do that. So I'm not hitting the panic button on the offensive line because the lineup that you just mentioned, I'm okay with. If I'm Daniel Jones, I feel protected back there. I'm like Coach Daboll, Coach Kafka, let's build off of these 5 guys we have right now. If I'm Devin Singletary, if I'm Tyrone Tracy, as a running back, I feel comfortable with that offensive line that you have in front of me.
They have to get him on the field, right? We know that. So as soon as they say, okay, that's our 5 group, once John Michael Schmitz comes back, and then it's like, you're going to pound those guys and use those guys, And one guy we didn't mention, I think we were talking about it on the sideline the other day. Neighbors, look spectacular, right? But Wan'Dale Robinson, I think if you would ask me right now, who's going to lead this team in receptions this year, I think it's going to be Wan'Dale Robinson. Yeah. And they throw the ball out of the backfield, jet sweeps, bubble screens, the slot, a little bit on the outside. Wan'Dale is if he's healthy, I mean, he's a little itty bitty guy. He's not tall, but they made him a 2nd-round pick for a reason. So I think it's going to be Neighbors and Robinson and Neighbors. Jalen Hyatt more down the field, and Darius Slayton a little bit of Mr. Do Everything. But I think it's the youth movement with Wan'Dale and with Neighbors, and I would say right now Wan'Dale could lead this team in receiving. Now. The other day, we saw him catch a pass over the middle that he could have run for longer, and Daniel threw it down at his feet, and he had a dive, right? So that's a completion and maybe a first down, but not good enough, right? Yeah. When you have a chance to get big plays, you got to get big plays. So, look, and you mentioned, whether Daboll or Kafka, it's Daboll. I mean, Daboll's calling the plays. He's called all the plays this summer. I'm 99.9% sure he's going to call the plays when the regular season starts. And no offense to Mike Kafka, but Brian Daboll's a proven play caller in this league, and I think that's going to be an upgrade. And you can just tell he's so comfortable and so natural on the field with the headset on, making the calls quick. Look, it's what he does. It's why he's a head coach, and that's why he's taking ownership of it. I think he's saying, look, the offense has to be better, and I got to go down with my best man, and my best man is me calling the plays.
Yep, and you see what he's doing with the orbit motions, the jet sweep motions. A lot of guys moving around in different spots. Like you said, Neighbors lined up in the backfield time to time. Same thing with Wan'Dale Robinson. He's somebody that I feel like people should pick up on fantasy just because he could have 100 yards catching, but he could also have 50 yards rushing just off of catching balls behind the line of scrimmage. I think they're going to do a lot with him, and he kind of makes it work. He's that piece. He's that third down. I don't want to necessarily say possession receiver, but he's that route runner that can do it all. And I talked to him yesterday after practice, and I'm like, man, did they kind of come to you before the season and tell you that you were going to be motioning and doing so many things? He was like, man, they already told me this is what they drafted me for. This is what they drafted me so high for, to do all of these things. So he was talking about just staying healthy this year so he can kind of maximize the plays that are called for him. So, yeah, he's a guy that's going to, I believe, touch the ball a lot. Before we move on to the defense, running back-wise, have you seen enough? And I know it's kind of hard with practice. They just had their second padded practice. Have you seen any explosion, anything coming out of the running back room or running back position to where you're looking at it like, okay, they may have a one-horse, two-horse, three-headed horse back there in that backfield?
I've seen some bursts from Dante Miller. Turbo. Yeah. Turbo. I mean, he's as a rookie, he played 3 years or 4 years at Columbia, of all places, right? And then got a little taste at South Carolina. He shows some burst. I mean, anxious to see what he does in the preseason games because that's where it's going to be seen. Look, you can see a little bit of wiggle and a little bit of burst out and on the practice field, but it's thud, right? It's not tackling. They're not taking him to the ground. I like what I've seen from Tyrone Tracy. He lost the ball on a fumble the other day, got it stripped. That's no good. Singletary is what he is. I think he's a good player. I think he's a grinder. I don't think he's an explosive guy. I just don't. I think I think his size, his lack of height almost works for him. He almost like burrows under guys, and he's really a short guy. He's not thin, but he's short. He's a short guy. Look, around the league, if you're gonna start ranking 1 through 32 running back rooms, this room's going to be ranked in the bottom 5. There's just no question about it, and that's fair until they prove otherwise. Yeah. Now, running backs can come out of nowhere, like Turbo Miller, like Tyrone Tracy, drafted in the 5th round, and I didn't even mention Eric Gray, who was a 5th round pick last year, had a really a nondescript rookie year, and I haven't seen a whole lot from him this summer, but I'm not, we got to see, and I think that's what the preseason games are going to be for. Get those guys the ball, see what they can do, and it'll be Singletary 1, and then 2, 3. I'm not sure yet.
Just looking at the speed on the perimeter with the receivers, my 1-2 would be Tracy and Miller, because you want that. Again, they're both potential home run hitters, especially the speed that Miller's putting on tape. It's on him. You've got a job waiting for you if you show up in the preseason. That, from what he's already put on tape right now within everyone watching practice, just completely running by linebackers, you've shown that you can be some sort of mismatch within this offense. All he has to do is put 1-2 big runs on tape during the preseason, and you got yourself. Go ahead, go look for a house or something, because sign that lease, young man, because you're going to be here in New Jersey. I think Tyrone Tracy adds a completely different element out of the backfield, and that's why you let a Saquon go. So you don't need to run through the tackles as much. You don't need a running back that can do that. I think Devin Singletary will be that guy, the between the tackle guy. But I think if these two young guys can kind of show their worth, especially out of the backfield, being elusive and being a mismatch, I think you slowly see playing time from Devin Singletary kind of dwindle and fade away towards the end of the season. Eric Gray has to go prove it. He's one of those, you got to go out there and do something spectacular during the preseason to not only make the team here, but elsewhere, because he didn't put enough on tape last season at all. But again, that's the battle within that offense, that running back room. Who's going to emerge? What 1 to 2 guys can emerge as one, a bruiser that can get tough yards, and 2, a guy that can be some sort of mismatch in the passing game.
And don't forget, Tracy was a wide receiver at Iowa. Now, I mean, a wide receiver at Iowa is kind of like I don't know, ice salesman in the desert. You know what I mean? Wide receiver at Iowa is rough, right? Yep. They had one of the worst passing attacks in college football. But he has the hands. He has kind of the build of a wide receiver in some ways. He's a bigger guy. So he has that natural ability. And, he became a running back at Purdue, and he had a good year last year.
Yep.
The Giants drafted him. He's 24 years old. You know what I mean? He's an old rookie. And you know what? They don't care at all because he's mature. And what has Joe Schoen, the GM, showed you about – that's hard to say. Joe Schoen showed. Wow, okay. What has Joe Schoen showed you about what he thinks about running backs? You get them, you use them, you abuse them, you're running them into the ground, and then you find another one, right? So what does it matter if he's 24? If he can do the job, he plays 2 or 3 years, 4 years for the Giants, and then you find another one, right? He did it with Saquon Barkley, who's only – he just turned 27.
Yeah.
So, he's 24. Okay, boy, you think, maybe he's not going to be here for the long haul. There is no long haul with running backs anymore for the most part. So 24, you're ready to play. You've shown your ability to catch the ball. Brian Daboll will have a role for Tyrone Tracy. He will. Yeah.
I believe that. Yep. Joe Schoen using running backs like paper towels out there. Let's Riverside it. Let's start with the secondary, Paul, because I don't know, the former wide receiver in me. I don't know just yet. I'm holding. I'm reserving what I really think about the secondary and where they can be right now, because you see some plays being made down the field by the receivers. I don't know where the secondary is right now. You've been at every single practice. You've seen one-on-ones. You've seen every single matchup. I guess who would be your starting four within the secondary right now if you had to pick?
Or five, really, because, right, you're going to play in
five.
Nickel. Yep. Well, you have Deontay Banks and Cordell Flott, I guess. I mean, this is who I think it'll be. And then, so you have Deontay Banks and Cordell Flott on the outside. I think Drew Phillips, the third-round pick, is going to be the starting nickelback. I mean, he's a competitive guy, and I liked what I've seen so far. Obviously Jason Pinnock will be one of the safeties. He's kind of filling that. He was a starting safety last year, and he has to now step up in class, right, to fill the shoes of Xavier McKinney. And right now it's Dane Belton, going into his third year. This is his time. He's a ball hawk. We've seen his hands around the ball because the rookie Tyler Nubin hasn't been on the field. He's got a calf, and he's a second-round pick. And, one thing, we'll talk a little bit about Hard Knocks later on, but, one thing when they were looking in the second round, when they took, when they were thinking about taking Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota, Joe Shane said to Shane Bowen, the new defensive coordinator, he'll be a day one starter for you, right? So that was the expectation, but, can't make the club from the tub, right? You can't make a starting job if you're not on the field, right? So, that's just the way it is. So he's a rookie when he comes in does not want to be battling from behind, right? They're already battling from behind because they're a rookie, right? Guys like Neighbors, their talent, they're putting him in the number one spot, and he's just got to earn it, which he's doing. But most of the rookies, you got to, even if they put you in the number one spot, you're battling from behind against veterans who know more about the league than you do. Nubin has, missed the first week. That's unfortunate. And Dave Belton, I think, is a pretty good player. But I agree with you. It's another one of those areas, like I mentioned about running backs, when they list the best defensive backfields, the best secondaries in the league, the Giants are going to be from the outside looking in, in the bottom group, no question, bottom third, bottom five, something like that, because it's really unproven. I mean, even Deontay Banks, who was their number one cornerback, their first-round pick last year, had an up and down and inconsistent, promising but inconsistent rookie year. So there's no bell cow out there right now at all. There's nobody out there you could say, okay, we're really good with him and we can move on. So, that's one of the reasons the Giants are predicted to not be a very good team this year, because their defensive backfield is definitely an area of concern.
Yeah, Tay Banks is definitely the best in show in terms of that room. I think they may have to bring in some sort of free agent. See what proven vet free agent out there can come in and play. If not, to battle for that CB2 spot with Cordell Flott, and you see Nick McLeod go out there from time to time, but you also see them putting Nick McLeod in the nickel position as well, giving him an opportunity to kind of show that he can go out there and play defensive snaps. But I think Cordell Flott's doing a good job, but I don't think he's taken that spot yet. I think that spot is still open. He's battling, he's competing, absolutely love it. But in terms of going and just making a Shane Bowen or Joe Shane feel like, okay, we got our cornerback too, who, if they throw opposite of Tay Banks, if they throw at him 10-plus targets a game, he's going to come down with at least a turnover and a couple pass breakups. I think that Cordell Flott's going to have to show that throughout this preseason when we get to the games. I like Dane Belton out there. He's already got an interception. Should have had an interception yesterday or the other day. He dropped that pick the other day. But, yeah, when you're talking about these rookies, Paul, like Tyler Nubin, you want him to get healthy. You don't want to rush him back. You're hoping he's not even taking mental reps, though, because he's off there doing rehab. So he's not even able to jog through anything, be out there to hear calls. He's learning through meetings right now. And a lot of guys, I wasn't one of those guys that can learn through meetings. I had to go out there and we had to jog through it. I had to see two high safeties, rotation to know what to do. And if you're playing free safety, you're the quarterback of the defense. So right now, I think Dane Belton has kind of done enough. I don't want to say to solidify that spot as the starting free safety, but right now, if I'm Shane Bowen, I kind of feel comfortable with what Dane Belton has kind of put on tape so far.
And let's get Jalen Mills, okay? Now, Jalen Mills, veteran, what? The Green Goblin, right? Like to call himself the Green Goblin from the Eagles. Green dyed hair. I guess he's going to have blue dyed hair, right? He's on the non-football injury list. I think he's close. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he's back on the field on Thursday. Not back on the field. If he gets on the field on Thursday for the first time, maybe comes off that list. And, he's a guy who, if he's healthy, will be in the mix at safety somewhere because he's got experience and he's been a legitimate NFL safety in the league.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with the offensive line. It's like you look at it and you're like, all right, they didn't bring in any stars within the offensive line, the secondary, but at least there's vet help. At least this is a guy that kind of understands the NFL, that already knows how to come in, be a professional, how to prepare, but at the same time has already had some game reps. But that secondary can be protected with a pass rush, with the defensive line. So far, the defensive line, I feel as though, has been the highlight or the best part of this team during training camp. Brian Burns is everything is advertised. Kayvon, that should open up Kayvon. Dexter Lawrence, 24th best player in the NFL, one of the top defensive tackles. Riley Anderson getting that start so far with the ones opposite of Dexter Lawrence. He's the biggest question mark, but he's in a great position to eat. Paul's defensive line could be one of the top defensive lines in pro football if they stay healthy. And Shane Bowen really lets them loose. What do you think?
Well, he's going to let him loose. I mean, that's his. Now he's blitzed. He's blitzed a decent amount this summer. But I think he will probably blitz less once the season starts. That would be my guess. That's his MO from Tennessee. I love the line. Kayvon. I mean, to me, Dexter is Dexter. I mean, he's one of the best. Now that Aaron Donald is retired. He's in the best handful of defensive tackles in the league. There's just no question about it. He's getting paid like it. He plays like it. That's just the deal. Brian Burns is a proven guy. He's very, very limber, isn't he? He gets low. Spider, right? Spider-Man.
Yep.
He really has that kind of a body that but he hasn't been unleashed yet. It's training camp. Yep. But to me, Kayvon is the key because Kayvon is a good player. He's an ascending player, but I'd like to see a little more as a one-on-one pass rusher. I loved what Kayvon told the story the other day about what his mother told him because I asked him about, look, Kayvon is next in line, right? Yep. Andrew Thomas, first-round pick, got a, Brinks truck backed up to his house, after 3 years because, Joe Shane inherited Andrew Thomas but said, we got to lock this young guy up, and they did after his third year. Dexter Lawrence, Joe Shane inherited Dexter Lawrence, another guy he didn't draft. He was here when Shane got here, and after 3 years said, we got to invest in this guy long term, and the Brinks truck stopped at Dexter Lawrence's apartment and gave him all the money. Now, Dexter is entering Kayvon is entering his third year, and this is what his mother, Kayvon said that his mother told him. You hang out with 3 clowns, you'll be the 4th. You hang out with 3 rich guys, you'll be the 4th, right? Now he's hanging out with 2 rich guys, right?
There he is.
Burns, who got monster money after the trade with the Panthers to come to the Giants, and Dexter Lawrence. So he's hanging out with 2 really rich guys, and can he be the 3rd in this group? We'll see. At this time next year, is Kayvon signed, sealed, delivered with a long-term contract? If he has a great year, yes. If he doesn't have a great year, the Giants will say, okay, we'll sit back and let you go into your 4th year of your contract. He was the 5th pick in the draft. This is his time, right? He's got Dexter in the middle. He's got Brian Burns on the other side. There won't be a million double teams. So very anxious to see how Kayvon plays this year.
It's like they're dangling that carrot right in front of his face. It's like we brought you help to now you're not the focal point anymore. So now you could really get he has the opportunity to really get after it. And with his type of personality and what I thought him, coming in and kind of being the next Michael Strahan when it comes to having a really solid career here and then possibly going into TV after, it's right there for him, and they helped him out by bringing Brian Burns. And those two chemistry, those two, like, they need their own podcast. They're like Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart. Those two are hilarious together. And, I cannot wait. Like, I think Giants fans are looking at this like they finally have OC and Michael Strahan on the side, JPP and Justin Tuck coming off the edge. This defense is for them. Linebacker-wise, the Isaiah Simmons experiment in this nickel, in the slot, what do you think so far? Because I don't like it when they match him up against Wan'Dale Robinson. It's like, don't do that, please. If you match him up with the tight end, running back, I'm with it. I like how they blitz him off the edge. That guy, he can play so many different positions, but I just want to be sure that Shane Bowen protects him when it comes to lining him up and putting him in certain situations. But linebacker-wise, Paul, I mean, what do you like so far?
Well, Bobby Okereke, I like. I don't like that Micah McFadden has missed a lot of time. He had a little hamstring in the spring, but he was a really good player for them last year. A surprise. And he's one of those third day draft picks that you have to hit on once in a while, right? Inside linebacker, running back, safety, guard. Those are the guys you can get early in those third day, right? Fourth, fifth, sixth round, and you look around the league, and those guys are starting and being good players in the league. The Giants have missed for years, for decades with those guys. And you can't hit on all of them because nobody does, but you got to hit on the David Deals, right? Yep. Darius Slayton is somewhat of a hit, right, as a fifth-round pick, right? Not a star, but a guy you want on your team and you want to sign to a second contract. So, so McFadden can be coming, he's got to get on the field now, and be in lockstep with Bobby Okereke, which I think he will be. I agree with you about Isaiah Simmons. Sometimes guys are what they are as advertised, right? Isaiah Simmons coming out of the draft what did we hear about him? He is the most versatile player in the country coming out of college, and some smart, innovative defensive coordinator is going to take him and make him a jack of all trades, Swiss Army knife, right? And the Cardinals drafted him in the top 10. And he's done some good things in the league, but he is a master of none, right? He's not a big-time pass rusher. He can cover for a big guy and for a linebacker. But, yeah, I mean, you put Neighbors or
Wan'Dale.
Wan'Dale or the guys they're going to have to play in the slot, he's just not going to stay with them. I think Isaiah Simmons has to be almost have a mental adjustment to say, you're going to be in this league you can be athletically one of the best special teams player in the league, okay? And then we'll find a role for you somewhere on defense. Right now, I don't know what his role is. I don't think it's going to be a third down pass rusher. Is it going to be a hybrid nickel kind of thing? Maybe, maybe. Is he a guy you want on the field in heavy package, run defense? Probably not. So we'll see. I mean, he has ability. Wink Martindale, when he got here last year, everyone said, Wink's going to turn him into a pass rusher and a blitzer. That didn't really happen, did it? It really didn't happen. So I don't know what his role is. I would, tamp down expectations that he's going to be a big part of this defense right now. But athletically, he's good enough to be somewhere, especially on special teams, if he will devote himself to that. We'll see.
Yeah, that first game against the Vikings, T.J. Hawkinson, tight end, really, really good tight end on the Vikings. I want to see what Shane Bowen does in terms of, are you going to match Simmons up with him? You're going to blitz him? What are you going to do with him? It's one of those things where so far, I don't see it just yet in camp, but at the same time, you want to put him in kind of unfamiliar situations to see what he can do, see what his limitations are, and if using him as some sort of Swiss Army knife is a big part of Shane Bowen's plans. Let's wrap this thing up, Paul. Hard Knocks wrapped up last night. Great episode. I love the access that they've gave us. I know Giants, Joe Shane, Giants fans kind of love him, hate him after every other episode, but what are your thoughts on kind of the Giants' Hard Knocks? And was there anything that's kind of been confirmed to you from the spring that you were like, I got some questions on, and then now it's been confirmed now that the episodes have released?
Yeah, episode 5 aired Tuesday night, and it was all football. It was all draft. The Saquon stuff was, lasted what, pretty much 3 episodes.
Yep.
That was in the rearview mirror. I know Joe Shane was very happy to not, relitigate the Saquon Barkley drama. He had to for a few weeks here in training camp and before training camp with Hard Knocks, but he was glad those episodes were done. I think he was also glad the episode with the Giants trying to trade up to get a quarterback, and they weren't able to do that, even though they were thrilled with Neighbors, which they were. A couple of things. In the second round, the Giants were looking cornerback. That's been our reporting, and that was definitely brought to light in this episode that they liked the cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry from Alabama and Kamari Lassiter from Georgia, I think in that order. And they were hoping in the second round they would get one of them. That's who they were targeting. And they also liked Tyler Nubin, who we mentioned, the safety from Minnesota, right? In that order, I believe. They prioritized cornerback because, they just don't have a number 2 cornerback. Adoree Jackson was on the team last year. He's not in the league this year. So the Giants had the 47th overall pick in the draft in the second round. Kool-Aid came off the board 41. You could see them, in their draft room, and they thought, there goes Kool-Aid. Okay. You can see very glum faces. 42, you know how it is. There's always a run on a position, right? 42, Lassiter goes to the Texans, and somebody in the back, one of the scouts, lets out, which I believe was an F-bomb, because he was on his phone before the pick was made, and they said, Lassiter, and you heard, and you see Joe Shane kind of look back like, okay, I guess we're not happy about this. And then they pivoted to Nubin, and they got him at 47. And Joe Shane, I know Brian Daboll was head over heels with Nubin as a guy, as a leader. He's an number 1, top character guy. Unfortunately, we haven't seen him on the field, like we mentioned. But that was interesting. And, the access was good. The access to HBO and what they had, those 5 episodes, was, I think, better than I thought. I expected Joe Shane to be the star of this, which he was. I expected not a lot from Daboll. I was correct with that. Daboll kind of wanted to be off on the side with that. It was nice to see the scouts, who I don't often see and certainly don't hear, to get their take on a lot of this, to have them speak. Hannah Burnett, the only female scout they have, full-time scout, really came across well. A lot of their scouts came across well. And Joe Shane was very quick to, after the draft, Shane got up and hugged every one of the scouts, and that was a nice thing. And then they had a team bonding party at a local place in Jersey with all the scouts and all the front office people, and very, and significant others, family, Giant family, that kind of thing. That was nice to see. So I think it was good. And now what happens is, we saw a lot of stuff that came out in Hard Knocks. So as these games and weeks and months go on, when things happen, we'll be able to kind of look back at that and ask Joe Shane about that. But it was good. It'll be interesting to see if HBO keeps this up. They'll probably want to. And which team now will either volunteer or be forced to do this off-season HBO. It's the first time they did it, because I'm sure a lot of teams will say, and a lot of GMs will say, no thanks, that's not for me. So we'll see.
Yeah, I love the access. And then you talking about that cornerback position. If I'm Cordell Flott, if I get wind of that, pick it up in practice, make sure you make some plays up in preseason, because that CB2 spot has a question mark on it, especially after that episode last night. Wrap us up here, Paul. What's up for the rest of the week heading into that first preseason game next Thursday?
Well, before the preseason game, we have a preseason, test, right? Monday is first of 2 joint practices with the Lions, at the Giants facility, and then they'll play the Lions in the first preseason game. 2 joint practices. It'll be good stuff. The Giants went to, the Detroit area last year for those joint practices. And in the first one, they got their clocks clean. They got their heads handed to them. And, the Giants were coming off a playoff season, and the Lions we weren't sure about, right? Yep. And the Lions turned out to be one of the better teams in the league, and the Giants turned out to be not that. So that was a precursor of things to come. The Giants hope to do better. The Giants did better in the second joint practice last year. So this year it'll be interesting. It'll be on their own turf, so to speak. Those practices are really good, really competitive. Still no live tackling, but after a week and a half of practicing against one another, it will be welcome. The practices will be open to the public, and so it'll be good. It'll be a good test for the Giants against one of the better teams in the NFC.
All eyes are going to be on those joint practices. First, the guys got to get through these next couple dog days of camp. Paul, thanks for hopping on with us, and then make sure you guys check us out next week. We'll have another Blue Rush training camp edition for you guys.